Hello, welcome to Contemporary Romance, a program in the all-virtual 2021 Virginia Festival of the Book. I'm Sarah Lawson, Associate Director of the Virginia Center for the Book, a program of Virginia Humanities. Thanks for joining us. Thank you also for your patience as we deal with some technical difficulties here, but we will be getting started now, so thanks. A couple notes before I hand the program over to our speakers. Please share your questions using the Q&A tab on Zoom or share them in Facebook. This event also has optional closed captioning, which you can turn on and customize at any time using the closed captions tab at the bottom of your window. If you haven't already read today's books, we hope you will. For details about how to buy them from our bookseller for this event, Books Bound to Please, visit vabook.org, where you can also explore our full schedule and watch past events. While you're there, please consider making a donation to support the festival's ongoing work at vabook.org/give. Also, we greatly appreciate the support of all festival sponsors, donors, and community partners. Thank you. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator for today, Priscilla Oliveras. Priscilla is the author of Anchored Hearts and writes contemporary romance with a Latinx flavor. Her work has garnered praise from the Washington Post, the New York Times, Entertainment Weekly, Oprah Magazine, Booklist, Publishers Weekly, and many more. Priscilla, welcome, thank you, and take it away.
Thanks, Sarah. Hola, everyone. Hi, thank you so much for coming to spend, if you're on the East Coast, part of your lunch, if you're maybe out west, maybe a mid-morning break. If you're somewhere else around the world and wherever you are, I hope you're safe and healthy, and we're ready to talk romance. So let's bring on our first panelist. It's Karen Gray. Karen Gray is the pen name for award-winning audio narrator Karen White. An actor on the stage and screen in the late 20th century, Karen began recording books in 1999 and continues to do so in between making up her own stories. She published her first 2 novels in 2020 and her third releases April 29th of this year. So it's just around the corner. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, I'm excited. Would you like to give us a quick blurb about your upcoming book?
The upcoming book, yes.
Or any of your book.
Well, I'll start with the first book. It is an opposites attract rom-com called What I'm Looking For, set way back in 1988. Is it historical? Is it contemporary? I say it's both. And it has a finance geek heroine and a Shakespeare quoting bartender actor hero.
Nice. I loved, I'll tell you at first when I was reading it and I thought, wait a minute, this is like around I was a little bit younger than they are, but it was really fun revisiting that era. And I wondered, it's contemporary, it's not historical, modern. I thought it was wonderful that you said it there. So I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And now we're moving on. Our second panelist is Lorelei Parker, the author of Crushing It. Lorelei, hi. She lives and works in Central Virginia in her free time when she isn't playing video games. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. She writes contemporary romantic comedy. Lorelei, you want to whet our appetite with a little info about Crushing It?
It's my little link from Zelda.
Oh.
Yeah, I have a bit of a Zelda addiction. Nice. Yeah, so my book, Crushing It, which is here, that came out in July, is about a video game designer who has a fear of public speaking, and she decides to face this fear by going to a bar challenge where she's supposed to read from an old diary and it's like a they call it mortification, I think. Mortify is what it's actually called. They do this live in different bars, and it's a real event that happens, but I said it in a fictional contest, and she's reading a diary from her college days about a guy she had a crush on and how embarrassed she was about it. And it turns out he's actually there. So that spins off into the story. So
such a great setup. And so I think both of your heroines, Karen's and Lorelei, have like a similarity that it kind of ties into a question I want to ask a little bit later. But let's bring up Tif Marcelo. Tif is the author of Once Upon a Sunset and In a Book Club Far Away. Tif is a veteran Army nurse, and she writes about the strength of families, the endurance of friendship, heartfelt romances, and she is inspired daily by her own military hero husband and her 4 children. Hi, Tif. Want to tell us a little bit about Good to see you.
So Once Upon a Sunset is a mother-daughter story. It's about 39-year-old Diana and 76-year-old Margot. And they discover they discover crumbs that lead them to the Philippines to discover family that they had not known about. But within their history, or within these ladies, there are two romances that occur with both Diana and Margot. So this is a contemporary romance. This is a contemporary fiction, but there are romantic threads in there. But I do write also contemporary romance.
Yes, I will say I loved how both of the women had those romance. I think the romance writer, the romance reader in me really loved that. But even the mother-daughter relationship was really touching, really moving. So first off, I want to say it's so great. Everybody, I mean, I'm down here in Florida. Lorelei, you're in Virginia. Tif, you're in that area. I'm not sure, Karen, what area you're in.
I'm in North Carolina.
Okay. So normally it might have been hard for us to kind of get together. So the one plus, the one silver lining over the past year has been the number of virtual events that, so we can keep, authors and readers can keep meeting together. And they've allowed us to connect, books throughout the pandemic have been, for me, and I see it also on social media, readers talking about how books help them kind of escape or get away, like a virtual vacation. And I feel like all three of your books kind of dip us into a different world, whether like with Tif, yours, we get to go all the way across to the Philippines. We also learn a little bit about World War II and what that was, what they were going through on the home front, and and a little bit of Diana's medicine. And Karen, you take us into the world of Shakespeare and theater and just like the life of a working actor. And I am not a finance person, so I found her conversations and your heroines, the way she could think, really intriguing. So a mix of finance and theater, and then the gaming world. You probably game enough for both of us because I'm a non-gamer, so I don't know very much, but so I found it really interesting. And so I just wanted to know if you want to share your connection or what drew you to your different story worlds. If Lorelei, would you like to go first and kick us off with your story world idea and why you wanted to take us there?
Well, I'm a developer. That's my job. So I wanted to write a developer heroine. But you don't see a lot of actual tech women. I mean, there's women that do social media or different types of influencers, things that we see a lot of, but not usually women who are actually programmers. So I wanted to give that some focus. And then also, with the gaming, part of the gaming is me, part of it is my kids. I mean, I'm always surrounded by somebody playing either Animal Crossing or, Mario Racing. Something's always going on here. And so I wanted to bring that in too, because it's something fun, and I kind of wanted to make this book sort of a hero's journey, in the sense there's always a story behind a game. It's not just, you don't just sit down and, I mean, obviously there's games like Asteroids or whatever, you just shoot things, but most role-playing games, they have a real story arc to them. And I wanted to have that in there with her, making progress, getting rewards, learning things along the way that she could then use later. And so it made a lot of sense to me to focus the whole thing. And I mean, it's only partly in the gaming world, because the rest of it obviously takes place in this other whole historical diaries and whatnot. So there's more than just gaming in there. It's just gaming is sort of more of the local flavor, if you will.
Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about the historical aspect?
So she went to college about 10 years ago. She went to Auburn University. So did I.
Oh, SEC. And I'm a gator. And I was the SEC nod.
I went to the University of Florida for my master's. So I'm a traitor in my family. So she lives in Atlanta, which is where a lot of people end up. My family's in Atlanta. A lot of people are from who went to school in the SEC, they end up around the Atlanta area, which is what she's there. So there's a lot of people there that she knows from college that she's running into. And so when she goes to read from this diary, it's from a comms class that she took in college, where they had to every day, there's where you have to write like a daily journal. And so she was journaling reading every day for this particular class she was in, and so were these other people that she knows from that time period. So there's a lot of overlap between the journal that she's reading and the journals that they're reading from, and so they're putting together kind of a little bit of a mystery of what happened to them together in the past, when she has an angle on what she thinks happened to her with these two guys that she's encountering again for the first time after 10 years, and their point of view, and it's revealing different pieces of information that she wasn't aware of until it comes forth in this diary reading.
Right. Yeah. Being able to intertwine all those pieces as an author, I'm thinking, gosh, how interesting, like all that layering in, but it was great. I loved it. And that's something I've never done. So even as a reader, I appreciated it. As an author, I appreciated it, as well.
And I'm a pantser, so that was.
Oh my gosh!
I had to plot that book. I was like, oh gosh. Yeah.
I would think so. So for anybody who's listening, if you're not sure, plotter and pantser, a pantser is typically like an author who has an idea and just kind of trusts their vision, and they sit down and they just kind of let the story flow. And a plotter, which I am firmly in that camp, typically has some kind of like outline or at least some scenes, some kind of structure that then they kind of follow. But Karen, you took us into, and my girls and I have done community theater, but nothing like what your characters are, working actors, and then also there's the finance aspect. And I loved how you blended that. So I'm thinking that comes a little bit from your acting background.
Yeah, I was a young actress in Boston in the 80s and early 90s, really more, but so that was one reason why I said it then. And I was really lucky to have both in college when I studied abroad, and when I was in New York City after college, and then a bit later to work with people who made me see that performing Shakespeare is sort of like the Iron Man of theater. It really takes everything you've got, your brain, your body, your soul, your emotional life, and exercises all of those. Not that I don't love doing other kinds of theater, but it really ignited a passion in me. So I spent about the first 10 years of my professional acting life mostly directing and performing in Shakespeare roles, both in Boston and around different parts of the country. The theater that's in the book is a fictional one. It's sort of my dream theater. It sort of takes the best of the theaters that I worked with and smushes them all together. And a lot of my mentors are in there in different guises, again, mushed together into one character sometimes. So that was the actor part of it. And then Kate, who is a financial analyst, is actually based on a close friend of mine. So closely based on her that she wouldn't let me use her actual name in the acknowledgements because she was afraid people might get mad at her for sharing some of the stories. There's a lot of sexual harassment in the book that Kate go through, which if you were in the workforce back then, a lot of younger women who have read the book are shocked, but people of my age and older who have read it are like, yep, that's what we dealt with, and especially in finance. It was a very male dominated field.
Yeah.
And still is, I guess, in some ways.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It was some of the stuff that she experienced in the workplace, was jarring. I would, and it's good to see that there's been some change. It's still around, but I think that is, that was an aspect that I was glad to see was real, realistic, because I love that all three of you have heroines in STEM, right? And being, so I loved that, that aspect of it. But the sexual harassment that she experienced really was, I'm glad that's a topic that is important, and you found a great way to weave it in, but it didn't overtake the story. It wasn't just about that, but it was a realistic part of a woman in her field, especially during that era, what they would have, what she would have been dealing with.
Yeah, that's
and
what I've kind of really enjoyed in writing these books set back then. There's a novella too, so I have 4 different ones once this next one comes out. And with each one, I've really played around, and a lot of readers have gotten this, with sort of luring people in with this feeling of nostalgia. Oh, weren't things so much simpler back then? Oh, we didn't have to date with an app, but I then once we get there, I like to play around with, whoa, some things were really terrible back then. And then some things, oh, we still have to work on those things, as in our society. So
yeah,
I like to mix a little, medicine in.
yeah, no,
My sugar.
a spoon, you did a wonderful job. And then Tif, I have never been to the Philippines, so I was really excited. But you kind of mix, I mean, Diana's believable. You open up and I feel like I'm in that labor and delivery room with her in the VIP suite. And so I guess, I know I figured you were drawing on your nursing background, but also I love, as a Latinx author, I love the ease with which, like, your book infuses a little bit of your culture, but it's just a part of it. It's like a natural feel. It doesn't, similar to like what Karen was saying, there's no like, lesson that we're learning or anything, but you did it beautifully. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about your inspiration to write and then to include the World War II aspects.
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, definitely the book opens up with Diana having to make a decision. And she is the OBGYN doctor on call, and she has to make a decision on a patient. Some of it has to do with the patient's financial status, right? And that scene is definitely, I would say, inspired by, like, I was a labor and delivery nurse for a short amount of time. Mostly I did mother baby, but I always say, like, the labor and delivery ward is like, it goes to hell in the handbasket. It's either wonderful, absolutely perfect, even in all the mess and in all the screaming or, the chaos, but it's still wonderful, or it goes the other direction, which is the worst case, right? There's such the range, but the range to the not so great is huge and painful. So I wanted to really bring that up. But the inspiration for my book really is my grandfather, who fought for World War II in the Philippines as part of the U.S. Army. So he was here in the United States and then enlisted during World War II, and then went back to the Philippines.
Yeah.
And then met my grandmother there. And she said, I am absolutely not going back to the United States. So he ended up staying there. So my dad and his siblings were born there, and I was born there, but we were all American citizens, right? Because my grandfather was an American citizen. So, the what if really played in, because he was here for very many years before he went back to the Philippines. Because by the time World War II happened, he was 40 years old, 39, 40.
Wow.
So it makes me wonder, right? Like, what kind of a life did he have here? And who did he meet? Who took care of him? Did he have any relationships? So this whole found family really came from that, and the generations thereafter, right? Because they're trying to find who they are. And it's this whole thing of identity, of our flux in identity and where we belong. And that could change in your work status, like, depending on where you work, that's your identity,
right.
It depends. Margot was a caregiver for her mother. So there was so many years where her identity was as this full-time caregiver. And when her mother passed away, what is she now? So they're both going through this flux, and then they find clues, and they're like, oh my gosh, we really need to go figure this out, because they think that this is what's going to heal their family. And in the process, they fall in love. So
Yay.
Yeah, it was great. So just a small like tidbit, it was so neat, because my husband is in the Army. He was able to get my grandfather's old documents from the military. So I was able to trace where my grandfather was at certain
Wow.
points in his career, which for my own family history is like priceless.
Yeah. It became like a
Yeah,
passion project, then more
for
so
sure.
that you're sharing with us.
Yeah. And I think,
Oh, I love
oral
that.
history is, it's kind of fuzzy,
Mhm.
especially from like my grandparents and my uncles. They have everybody has a different take on what happened so long
Yeah.
ago. And so to have these documents that it's like, okay, for real, he was here because he got his paycheck right there,
Yeah.
So it's just to be able to imagine his
Right.
route is kind of super
I,
neat.
I love the idea that you his you kind of created his family here, like the family that he would have left behind when he stayed over there, out of that story.
Yeah.
Well, so
I really love that. I love the idea of somebody having a full life and then
Yeah.
another life. And that's
Yeah.
really is fascinating.
And I
Well,
think too, like also with the two, Diana and Margot's 76 and she still has a life after.
yeah.
And I wanted that definitely there. That's why I wanted her to fall in love, right? It's because I always think that there's always an after,
Yeah.
there's more.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's a good message. Like it's never too late to start something new. It's never too late to. I loved the ladies Thelma and Louise, on social media. But I feel like how you're talking about, like in both of yours, in Lorelei and Tif, there was like, how you mentioned earlier, Lorelei, that the letters and the journals and those two aspects, how you both found their different ways, but it works in both of your books, to weave in those aspects. So we're sticking to like Women's History Month, or Her Story Month, as I've heard it called also. And all three of your heroines, or I will say Tif, you're two, because Margot is one in her own right as well. They're multifaceted, strong women. I really feel like they kind of debunk that age-old idea from generations past that some people still tend to have now, that romances are all these, waif-like women who needs to be saved by the viral alpha male. And I firmly believe that we've come a long way from that. And both of your, all three of your heroines and Tip, both of yours kind of debunk that idea. So I guess I wanted to ask what your thoughts are. And I love that, like I said earlier, they're all STEM. Your thoughts on kind of where romance is now. If there's someone who's listening in now or listens to the recording who is not as familiar with the romance genre, what would you tell them, about the romance genre today? Karen, you want to start?
Well, I will say that was another reason I wanted to set my books in the 80s, because from my understanding, the romance books written in the 80s were kind of the worst of this example of the bodice ripper. And, there's even a lot of rape that was then considered seduction. So I feel like we need to have a do-over with that era of romance, because my experience and my experience of my peers was that most of us coming out of the 70s, we had a pretty healthy sexual life and appetite and experience, and most of the women I knew were smart and go-getters, whatever their field was. So that's, I'm writing from who I know, whether I actually went into finance or not. I totally could identify with Kate that, and it was a struggle to have to balance your career and this whole wanting to have it all with finding both the time and the emotional bandwidth for a relationship. And knowing how much to give and take. And that really still interests me. I mean, I think it's something that every day, I consider. So that was my intention.
Nice. Lisa R here in the chat is saying you nailed it about the sexual harassment in the workplace in the 80s. So thank you, Lisa, for chiming in. Lorelei, what about you? What would you think? How do you see you're maybe crushing it as an example of how romance has evolved.
Oh, I would say I'm not an example, and I am not an expert on a romance.
Yeah, but just your thoughts.
I mean, for crushing it, my thing is I like alphas, I like betas, but I like gamma. The gamma is sort of an in-between kind of romance. It's a hero who has, like, they're assertive, they've got confidence, they've got like some of the good traits of an alpha, but they're not like, alpha holes. So
I like to say cinnamon roll heroes.
Kind of. I think of cinnamon rolls being more beta in a way. Yeah, for me anyway. But yeah, I like the sweet boys. What I would say though, for what I see happening in romance right now that's really exciting for me is that it's really breaking open in terms of points of view. I really love queer romance, and like the last year or two, it's like become super mainstream. And it doesn't look like it's going to be stopping anytime soon, which is exciting. That for me has been one of the best things that's been going on in romance. That, and also of course diverse points of view of all kinds that have been getting a lot of attention. So it's great because you get to read a lot more perspectives than you normally would in the. I mean, it seems like it's getting. To me, it seems like it's getting better. I know that we have a long way to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there has been change where, lots of people were still calling for more change, but I do, similar to what you were saying, I do believe that in the romance genre, the beauty of it is under this romance umbrella, there is more than likely, a book for you, the reader, whether it's heat level, whether it's subgenres, whether it's point of views, whether it's the jobs they're doing, so we've come a long way. But like you said, yeah, we still have a little bit more.
But Tiff, it's exciting to see.
Yes, I completely agree. Tiff, what would you say?
Yeah, so I came into romance. I'm a young romance reader, at 10 years, maybe 12 years. So I came in and I have I have already folks that I look up to that were already in place. So I'm coming from that point of view where it's a very positive experience for me, where I've seen and read many of the diverse voices out there that really just fueled me to encourage me to write romance and to continue to write romance. But with this book specifically, like, I really wanted to explore people, because a lot of contemporary romance are written with characters who are in their 20s or perhaps in their late 20s and in early 30s, but I'm no longer in that stage. So it was nice in this book to be able to put a 39-year-old who is not set, and then a 76-year-old who figures out like there is more for her. And it really, for me, it's an homage, I guess, to say like that romance is for everybody. And that's what I see right now. And I think that folks are really not only opening their minds, but I feel like people are continuously talking about it. Lorelei, you're talking about it, so many folks are talking about this need for inclusive romance, which I think is so important.
Yes. Amen. Just everything Tiff said. But it's beautiful to, yes, like we have more work to do, but I feel like there are more doors opening. We're seeing more, like right now, if you're on social media, the wave of support for AAPI authors and in the entire community, I feel like the more we talk about it, and the more we support each other, and the more books that are out there expanding perspectives and giving people different experiences, then the more that those differences become the norm instead of just the anomaly. So I love that. So let me see where we are here. We talked about how all of your books for me were different escapes to different worlds. What do you guys have any title, like what's one or two books that either just across time that you can pick up that are on your keeper shelf, or maybe that you read in the past year that kind of helped you get away from everything going on? Lorelei, do you have a book or two you want to recommend?
So last year, I was lucky enough to get an ARC for boyfriend material. So that was my first entrance into Alexis Hall, who actually has a backlog that I then went through. In July was basically just I became the biggest dorkiest Alexis Hall fan on the planet. I think he knows that now. And yeah, so all of those books were fantastic.
Nice.
Also, The Roommate last year was amazing. Great
Ooh.
sex positive, hilarious book.
Mhm.
And I just
Yes.
got Casey McQuiston's ARC as well, the new one. I recommend
Ooh.
that as well. It's
Oh,
really
I'm
good.
jealous.
I know.
Ooh, you got the
Sounds
art?
great.
I got the ARC, yeah. I got the ARC for Royal Blue too, and I thought I was like the only one that was like, I was all like, oh, I'm your fan, and then it's like that book got huge, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just get in line.
Hey, you've got arts. Nice. Karen, what about you?
I think it's interesting. Like for me, I think what I love about romance is when it sort of runs parallel to real life, where there are things that are grounded in reality, but you know there's going to be a happy ending. And I think for me, that has been what I have needed this year.
Yeah.
And the most recent book that I read that is like, I've read so many that have done that for me, but most recently is First Comes Like by Alicia Rye.
Oh,
It's
so good.
the third
So
in
good.
this trilogy, but she does a really interesting thing in that book where she refers to COVID. She doesn't ever say the word, but she makes it pretty clear that the heroine was really sick and separated from her family. And it just feels right for me in for this time. There's a melancholia to it, you know, that sort of underlies it, but there's also joy and hope and a happy ending, of course.
Nice.
So that book, I think, was really eye-opening to me I feel really lucky writing in the 80s that I don't have to include COVID in my books going forward, at least not for another few years maybe. But I thought it was a really deft way of dealing with it plot-wise, but also emotionally, it was spot on.
Because that is something anyway. I get people have asked me if I'm including like COVID and the pandemic, and thus far, like the book that I'm revising now will come out in 2022, but it has no mention of it. So that's a fine line. I wonder at what point
I feel like it's got to be fair game either way.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
It's so hard to not.
And
you know, my kids even will watch a show like that has obviously was filmed, you know, years ago, and they'll even say, like, as I'm sitting next to them, oh my gosh, they're too close to one another. You know, I think it was one of Jenny Han's movies, you know, and my daughter was like, oh my gosh, they're like about to kiss, Mom. And I'm like, and it wasn't because of the kiss, it was because they're gonna put lips into one another. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Wow. It's amazing how it is now seeped into, you know, our psyche, part of our normal life. So Tif, do you have a book? Do you have a book or two? I don't think you've recommended yet.
I have a couple of books. So one is Tembi Locke's From Scratch. So this is a memoir of a woman who goes to Sicily. And I think she was there for her grad school, for an exchange. And she meets a restaurateur that ends up becoming her husband. It was really her memoir about losing her husband to cancer and then finding love again after that. And if you follow her now, like on social media, she's remarried and it's just beautiful, but it's really so heartfelt. I read that in the middle of COVID. And it was the perfect thing to read because there was so much hope in the truth of it all, you know? So that was a wonderful thing that, it was romantic at the same time because her prose was just beautiful. And the second one is Tracy Livesey's Like Lovers Do. And that takes place half in Baltimore and then most of it, actually not half, most of it in Martha's Vineyard. And so that was super fun because I'm just like, I want to go away. Let's go on vacation. Let's go to Martha's Vineyard and chill out.
I have to say, Pris, thank you, by the way, for taking me to Key West last year.
Oh
that's
gosh.
so great.
I appreciate you saying that. It was that book is the first book was kind of like an homage to the island, you know, and
Yeah.
my hope is people who have been there feel like they revisited, and those who never have been feel like they, you know, they had their toes in the sand with the other ones. But so many books were able, you know, to do that for us. If you're listening in, remember, if you can, there are links here in the chat to all of the ladies' books. So you can, or if you don't click on one of those and you go later to look for them from your local indie bookstore or your favorite indie bookstore, we would really appreciate supporting, you know, your local indies. And let me see, we've got about 17 more minutes. I think I jumped over and I did want to talk about this, how, you know, I mentioned that like your heroines are really strong. All of your, you know, your main characters, even, you know, your secondary characters and all of your books were just people that I wanted to go hang out with. I wanted to go get a drink at the bar in your novel, Karen, and I wanted to jet off to the Philippines and go to a party. And I can't remember the location of your city, Lorelei, but
Atlanta.
Oh yeah, Atlanta. I mean, if I'm in Atlanta, the first thing I want to do is go to a baseball game. I'm not sure if your heroine is as big of a sports fan as I am. I don't think
Football.
So, but as strong as they are, what helps them to be believable is the flaws that they have or the struggles that they're dealing with, because I think that helps as a reader. You know, it makes the character more believable. So I found it really interesting, Lorelei and Karen, that both of your characters are dealing with some form of anxiety, and they kind of handle it in a little bit different ways. So I wanted to know how you researched that, or how did you get it so believably on the page? Whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, I'd love to say that, first of all, it's almost like someone gave Lorelei and me the same writing prompt, and we ended up with totally different books. Because
yes,
if you just said, okay, write a book about a nerdy heroine who is afraid, who has a deep fear of speaking in public,
mm-hmm.
and then who meets a bartender that then she falls in love with. I mean, and then we just divert from there.
Right. But it shows you how you can have a
That's
blurb in different authors' hands, and then you have different characters, you know.
Yeah, it's like nothing new under the sun except everything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I'll say that, so when I was in Boston, in fact, in addition to acting and directing, I taught acting and vocal production. And part of that training to teach was recognizing that speaking in front of strangers or speaking in front of a group of people, and I just looked this up again, 75% of people ranked that as their number one fear.
More than death.
Before death.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And I think that's partly because we don't think that we're going to experience death. You know, we just can't even face that.
Right.
But we might experience having to speak in front of a crowd. So we spent a lot of time sort of understanding what happens in your proprioceptive nervous system when the fight or flight response happens, which is what happens to anyone who is fearful of anything, but especially in this situation. And I personally I am not a visual my imagination does not work in the visual realm as much. It works aurally, A-U-R-A-L-L-Y. So I hear things, but I also feel them in my body. So for me, that's how I sort of put myself in that situation. And even though I'm an actor, I have performed, I don't even know how many times in front of audiences, whether it's improv or Shakespeare or whatever, but doing this kind of thing is scary to me. So I think that there's always something that we can connect with as writers or readers. And we can put ourselves in that situation. And then if you let yourself feel what you're feeling, then the words to me come from there.
Right. Try to put yourself in the character's shoes, like you're there. What about you, Lorelei?
Did not have to research that one bit. If you could see me, I'm doing this right now with my hands.
Oh no.
I have, it's weird. I'm an extrovert for the most part. I have I have high woo, if you know.
Yeah, that's great. I'm woo 9.
I'm fine in most situations. Like if I'm at a party, I'm right there talking to everybody. But something like this, getting on a camera, getting in front of people, I don't mind a chat. I don't mind. The panels are great for this because we all are talking and we're all having one-on-one things. Yeah, no, it's a totally physical response. I can mentally tell myself, what's the worst that could happen? And yet the words going through my head at the beginning of it, I would rather be dead. So I can see where it's above. Yeah, it's weird because I don't, like, what is the worst that can happen? You're kind of embarrassed, or you say something stupid, or I don't know. You come off like an idiot. I don't really know what it is, but there's just something physically that it is definitely fight or flight, and it's a whole physiological thing, and there's nothing you can do to control it. Really, it's going to happen. And so that's kind of where I was with my character. Is like she was fighting against this. Trying really hard because she knew that she could do these things. She was able to teach classes, which I'm perfectly capable of doing. Things where she's familiar, where people know her, where she's in control. All of those things, fine. Get in front of a group of people on a microphone, and it was just like game over. So
you could more easily put yourself in
absolutely.
The character's shoes.
She was like definitely a personal experience all the way.
Nice.
Well, I have to. Funny enough, I consider myself an introvert, but I am a gregarious introvert.
Okay.
And I think a lot of actors are, where you've developed a whole set of tools to sort of get through social situations or performative situations, but it is exhausting. So you just want to crawl back in your little hole.
There are a lot of writers that are like that, like at conferences, they need to go back to the room, like to decompress.
Yep. Yeah, I take a nap, like in the middle of like in RWA.
I do too.
I've got to go.
Yes, I've been known to go up to our hotel room and take a cat nap also.
Naps are wonderful.
Yes, but Tif, Diana is confident, like she, and part of that is, I feel like her job. What I noticed though with her, so I wanted to ask more probably from a writer's perspective. And then Emily, I see your question, so we'll get to your question next. I don't want you to think we're not going to ask it. Emily's got a question in the Q&As, and I have the box open. But Tif, Diana, one of the things about her is that she's a little bit like removed, or she like keeps herself a little bit apart from her loved ones. Like that's what Carlos says was the problem. Her mom notices about her. So I wondered, when you have a character who is kind of like shut down in some areas, is it as an author, was it harder to identify with her, or were you able to peek inside her brain to get that on the page? Or how was that writing a character that is really contained like she is?
Yeah, I really had to ask myself, like, who is she? What moves her and what keeps her going? And I feel like I can associate with her just a tiny bit, in the sense that when somebody talks to me about how do you go from one thing to another, and I always say, well, when I go into one patient's room, I'm focused on that patient, and I've blocked everything out behind me outside of that door, and I'm with that patient only. And then when I walk out, like, I forget about that patient and I move on to the next patient. So I feel like that's how Diana is, but to the max. So there are some things that she doesn't want to face. So she would rather focus on the things that she knows she can do, which is deliver babies, or assist mothers to have their babies. Doctors don't deliver babies, right? Mothers have their babies. So, but for me to write that was really tough, because it's always, you have to figure out like what really hurt her. And I don't like to think of my characters hurting. Yeah. So in the first drafts, she was still very like chipper, and but it didn't make any sense for the kind of pain that she had. So everybody just deals with grief differently, and some folks just tend to just put it away, put it away and keep working. And workaholism is a true thing. And for
it's
some,
a good way to not deal. It's a good way to not have to deal
really,
because you're dealing with this. So
yeah, and in our environment, in our society today, it's an accepted way because everybody's always at work, and the cool thing is to be busy. So for a woman like her who's using her work as a shield, sometimes you don't, she doesn't know that that's her coping, and some people don't even notice it for forever because everybody is so busy all the time. And next thing you know, she's just really grieving, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think all three of you did, like, the issues that each of your characters were dealing with are universal on some, you know, on some level. So like as a reader, I don't get a lot of stage fright, but unless I'm not prepared, right? I don't want to be like pushed out there and, you know, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be saying out there. Then I'm, you know, but yet there have been times where, you know, like at a cocktail party, I'm not the best at just going up to a bunch of strangers. I'm going to look for the person that I know, you know, and feel comfortable. So there were moments where I could identify with both of your heroines, Karen and Lorelei, you know, and Tif. How many times have we, you know, and as readers not wanted to have to deal with something, so we focus on, you know, on something else. So I thought y'all, all three of you did that beautifully. Look, Nicole says we nurses can use that 12 or 16-hour shift to push things away. Gosh,
it's very easy to do that because you're forced to, and
you have to think about your patients and them, so you don't have time to think about your stuff. Totally. So Emily, here in the question and answer, she said, how do you talk about yourself as a writer when you meet people randomly? And then she had like in parentheses, it can be awkward to talk about romance or writing romance sometimes. So boy, that is that can be, well, I'll just let, who would like to answer? Like if they, you know, if someone asks, what do you do? Or someone says, so, you know, what do you write? Or anybody want to try? Tif? Yeah, go.
This happened this morning. So, kids started back up at school part-time here in our district. So I am now walking my 10-year-old to school, and there was a mom there. She's great. She's been in our neighborhood, but we haven't seen each other, right? Because it's COVID.
Yeah.
And we're just talking, and I don't bring my work up at all because I'm just like, this is so weird because I'm an introvert in that sense. And then she asked me what I did for a living, and I'm like, well, I write books, you know, and what kind of books? But it's not. And then, you know, once I'm open, then I start talking about it. But just to say what I do is shy. But I don't like to talk about myself, period. So that's just me. I'd rather talk about our kids and whatever's happening in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Lorelei, what were you going to say?
It's funny because I have another, this isn't what I do. It's my side job. So when people ask me what I do, I never say writing. I always say I'm a developer. Yeah. I mean, if I'm like a dentist, I know people who can just sit there and sell their books, and I'm like, never bring it up. It's just, it's I'm shy about it. So, it's.
What about you, Karen?
I have to admit that I hate that I do this, but I mean, I also have audiobook narration is really my primary job now. And people are often especially now, because more and more people are listening to audiobooks than ever. They're like, oh, that's so cool. And they want to know how it works, you know, but I think people are similar about writing, but I think a lot of people they know everyone can write something. But I think it is a big mystery to people how one actually writes a book, a novel, you know. And I do often sort of say, well, I write romance. Like, it's not like literary fiction, you know, which I hate that I do that, but I do feel compelled to do that. But then I'll circle back around and say, but you know, it's a big genre. It's a genre where there is amazing writing, where there's really adventurous writing. There's crappy writing too, but there's crappy writing in every genre. And my goal is to write the best romance I can. And the reason I want to do it is that I want to put positive things out in the world. Especially now, but I don't know. I couldn't write a mystery if you made me, especially I couldn't write about murder and I don't think I could even write about delivering babies, because I don't ever want to revisit that part of my experience in life again. But I mean, not that the product wasn't great, but the experience itself, that's great. So I want to work on that. I want to work on owning romance more on the first mention, not after 15.
And then some. No, I like to, say that, romance, at least I feel where we are today, is a depiction of healthy relationships. So, and across, especially since we're seeing, more diversity, like Lorelei, you were saying how your love seeing more queer. I think it's an example of, doesn't matter, like love is love and we're all deserving of it. And I feel like predominantly romances today are examples of, if you have the right partner and you have, even the secondary characters, right? If you have healthy relationships around you and you're working to be a healthy person, then overcoming the odds, or overcoming that conflict, is possible. So we're going to go, I just got a message, since we start a little bit late, we can go to like 105, 110. So I have one kind of last fun question. I guess someone in here, Kathy, says that Gone with the Wind was romance, and I'm gonna say, mostly because I'm a teacher, and so I have my MFA in writing popular fiction. I teach a romance writing class. Actually, Gone with the Wind is fiction, like romantic fiction, but like the definition of romance, the book needs to end in that happily ever after, or like YA, or what's like maybe
Happy
chick
for
lit,
now.
like Happy for Now. It has to have that satisfying ending. So, and even if, what I would tell my students, even if like the same couple's going to be like in the next book, so they're not walking down the aisle at the end of that book, the reader needs to feel satisfied that there's been some forward progress in that relationship, even if, okay, book 2, we're going to still visit these same people. But like a lot of people will say Nicholas Sparks is a romance writer, and he has written a couple maybe, but even he himself will say he's not a romance writer. He writes romantic books, but I'm not going to give away the ending in case someone here has not seen the movie or read the book, The Notebook. The endings are a little bit different, and neither one of them meets the romance criteria. So The Notebook is a romantic film and a romantic book. But I'm going to take off my teacher hat now and ask a fun question.
But that's good, because it's good to point that, because it is a point of topic.
Yeah, and people will say Romeo and Juliet. It's like, what?
Oh gosh!
No.
It has a romance. It isn't a romance. There's a difference.
There's in the audiobook world, our sort of Oscars are the Audies.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, and it's finally, I believe, that we have educated those who are in charge, but it would be Nicholas Sparks and books about, like, what's that book? The Bridge.
Oh yeah.
Bridges of Madison County.
Yes. Yeah. It would be those kind of books that were in the romance category, and people who both, back then I was just narrating romance, but people who wrote it and narrated it would be so frustrated because that's not romance.
It's romantic, but yes. Okay. Right. So Penn Fed is, I'm not sure what your first name is, but they're nudging us. What's the fun question? Okay. And the fun question, I think Lorelei, you threw this out here. Carmela, hi, thanks for the nudge. The fun question Lorelei kind of came up with when we were emailing was, what would your, and you can say both, your hero and heroine, or Tif, you could say Margot and Diana, whatever, but how would your characters be passing their time while quarantining during the pandemic? Lorelei, you want to go? It was your question.
Well, this is easy. This is easy. Mine's in her basement. She's in the dark. She's got her network hooked up. She's talking to people on World of Warcraft. She's got no problems at all with the pandemic.
She's fine staying home.
She is perfectly fine. She's at home. At home. So that's not a problem. Her one of the guys involved, he owns a bar, so he's having a bit of a time, it's financially, it's difficult, but things are starting to open up, so maybe he'll be fine.
Maybe he was doing curbside service. I don't know if they allowed that in Atlanta, but like some places you could do curbside service, so I hope so for his sake.
I'm sure he's fine.
Yeah. Karen, what about your characters? How were they quarantining?
Well, if mine were magically transported in time forward out of the 80s, they did have to deal with it. Kate, who is an introvert like me, she'd be fine. She'd be on her computer, and she would have Will there to entertain her, and her cat when she needed that. She'd be fine. He would be struggling a little bit, but I think he would quickly set up his own YouTube channel, and he would be performing he'd perform an entire Shakespearean play all by himself. Also, he would probably do cocktail mixing.
Totally.
Teaching people.
Yeah.
Because he was like, that movie Cocktail. He does.
Yes, I could totally see him doing
and
that.
Throwing, and so he'd probably do both of those, maybe together. I don't know, like
I would watch that. I would watch that. Yes. Tif, what are Margot and Diana doing?
Well, Diana's working. I mean, she's always working, but people are still giving birth, so she's still in the hospital. And that's Diana. And then Margot, she's probably sunning herself outside. She's an extrovert. She's an Instagrammer, like influencer in her 70s. Yes. So she's probably out there sunning and taking pictures of herself and uploading them.
Yeah, she is. I would wonder, and this might be a serious note, but how Diana would be de-stressing, like having a daughter that's in the healthcare system right now. Like, how is she? Yeah, that
poor
PTSD.
woman. I love her.
She's so buttoned up right now. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if she was in a pandemic, that would be really hard. But thinking about Margot and wondering what is Margot uploading to social media, and I would totally watch Karen. I would watch her Heroes YouTube channel, or I would get on TikTok for him, even though I'm not. So let me see if there were any other questions here. I was trying to watch. I don't think so, but we are at 1:05. So do you guys, real quickly, do you want to say like what book is coming up? I know that Karen, you have a book coming around the corner at the end of the month. You're like 2 days after, not this month, but next month. So what real quickly?
My next one is called You Spin Me. And
that's excellent.
Right round, baby. That song? Yes.
It's the story of an actress and a radio DJ who fall in love on the phone. It's Beauty and the Beast themed story. And so the challenge comes when they have to meet in person, and what happens then. And
what's the title?
What?
Did you say the title?
You Spin Me.
You Spin Me. Oh yeah, I was singing the song. Never mind. Yes.
The cover reveal is next Friday, and then it comes out. So I can't show it to you yet, but it comes out April 29th.
29th. Nice. Lorelei, do you have something coming up around the corner, or that you're working on that you can talk about?
I have a book coming out. I have another pen name, Mary Ann Marlowe, and I have a book coming out in May called Falling in Luck.
May what?
It's May the 4th, I think.
May the 4th be with you.
Yes,
nice.
Yes, precisely. I don't have a pitch handy. So this is about a girl who has terrible luck, or she thinks she does. She believes in luck, and she has a massive crush, sort of a Pretty in Pink sort of situation, where she has a massive crush on this very hot, wealthy guy and a goofy best friend character. And through a series of bad luck, misfortune events that happen to her, she winds up being proposed to by the guy of her dreams. So like bad things land her in like the best situation she thinks she can be in, but it may actually be even worse luck than she could imagine.
Maybe it's to be careful what you wish for.
So she ends up in a bit of a great situation, unfortunately for her.
Oh wow. So we've got April 29th and May 4th, and Tif, you have in a book club Far Away, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that, and when is it coming out?
In a Book Club Far Away comes out April 6th. And it is right behind me. And it was the Book of the Month selection for this year, for this month of March. And it is an army wife story. So it's 3 women who met at a book club 10 years ago, and something happened in that book club. And in the present time, they get back together because one of them calls an SOS, but the other 2 don't know that they're going to be there. And then so it's a twin timeline story, and there's 3 marriages that has to kind of survive the 10 years as well. So it's not just a friendship story, but it's their marriages over time also. But I also have a contemporary romance coming out with Montlake on August 10th, and it is a private island. It's called It Takes Heart, and it's on a heart-shaped resort, and it's a second chance romance. There's heat in that, so it's like 2 out of 10, I think, if you put a heat level on it. And then I have a YA romance coming out with underlined paperbacks in October 5th, and that is a Christmas YA.
Oh, yeah. Wow. So you've got 3 books that are across the women's fiction,
super fun,
romantic elements and strong romance, and then a YA romance.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, nice. So we've got lots of books. Please, if you're, it's about time for us to wrap things up, but please look at the links in the chat or follow these wonderful authors on social media. You can find them on Twitter, Instagram, maybe Facebook. So please check them out. Thanks, Karen, Tif, and Lorelei, and to everyone who joined us, who is here watching on Facebook or via Zoom, or if you're tuning in later, thanks for watching the recording. Please consider buying their featured books from your local independent bookseller, or like I mentioned, use the links that are provided here in the chat. You can also check out other events in the all virtual 2021 Virginia Festival of the Book by going to vabook.org. Thanks everyone for joining us. Adios.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.